Okay, so we're in Shulchan Aruch Seif Dalid, and there's just one. We've really gone over it. That says that you need 10 people for saying Sheva Bracha, 10 men really, and the question is, what about Asher Hara? If you look in Dalid, then there's Mark Dalid, Sifkat and Dalid of the Chelkat Mechokek, and there it says in the Shulchan Aruch it says Ella Birkat Asher Bara Einot Tzarich Asara. You don't need 10 for Asher Bara, which is very interesting halacha, because we're all we know about the 10. But here you could say the Ramah says so we need 3. So let's look at so that's the standard opinion. But but it's just interesting. I like to point out the machlokot. So look at the Taz. Taz is on Daled. Joel, you want to read it?
Sure. Except you have to tell me what Mem Kaf is there. Something Lemeharal.
I don't know actually. I don't know.
Okay. But it's something Lemeharal in Prague. But Mashikatu Begamara. Vihu Shabo Panim Hadashot. All right. Vizal Ulakaman Amrinan de Asher Bara Mivrachin.
No, Vizel Lashon.
Zel Lashon. I just read it as all, but yeah. Ulakaman Amrinan de Asher Bara Mivrachim Afiu Below Panim Hadashot. Mishum
Hachi. So he says the Gemara says that you have to have Panim Hadashot for your Sheva Brachot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But not for Asher Bara.
V'lakaman amrin and Asher bara mivarchin afilu below panim chadashot. So now we're saying that the difference is that you don't need panim chadashot for Asher bara. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So umishum hachi yesh mochichim da Asher bara la berkat chatani aval ein zeraya. All right. So that's proof that it's not berkat chatanim. It doesn't fall into that category. But that's not
because you don't need panim chadashot. It must not be part of Birkat Chatanim, because for Birkat Chatanim you need Panim Hadashot.
The Ikalameidak, if Ibcha, we can say the opposite if we're middayak, right? The Kamar Batar Hachi, Yoma Kama Barich Kulhu, Mikan Ve'elach, Ika Hadashot, Mevarech Kulam, Ve'im Lav, Mevarech Shasimcha Bimono, Va'asher Bara. Right? So it's right. The Gemara says that the first day, right, you say all the brachot. And from then on, if there's Panim Hadashot, you do it. If not, you say Simcha Bimono in the Zimun, and you say Asher Bara. All right. Midelo Kamar Yoma Kama Mevarech Birkat Chatanim Mikan Ve'elach La Shmamina Digam Asher Bar Birkat Chatanim. So it doesn't say Birkat Chatanim. It says Barich Kulehu, right? And therefore, right, if it had said Yoma Kama Barech Birkat Chatanim Mikan Ve'elach. That would make that they were different from Birkat Chatanim. But the fact that it doesn't say that means they are still part of Birkat Chatanim, or could still be part of Birkat Chatanim at least. So
right. So he's saying, right, and as it didn't say from here on you don't say Birkat Chatanim. It says you do, you could. It says you don't say all these Shev Brachos, but you could say Asher Bara. So therefore, Asher Bara must be considered, or could be considered, like you said, a Birkat Chatanim. Okay, go on.
Umashikatav, akatuv, vehu shebau panim chadashot, Rav Yehuda Ari bechol Birkat Chatanim. The Mefarish, I said when Rav Yehuda he's dealing with all Birkat Chatanim when he says that is when Chadim Chadashot come. Why? The Mefarish acharkach, umay mevarech, the amar acharkach leferushe ata, the amrina and davka sheyesh panim chadashot. Asher bara have gamkin berkat chatanim. So, okay, let's make sure I follow that because Rav Yehuda says he says what the Gemara says what do you bless, and he says and it says after that it comes to explain it that it's only with panim chadashot that you bless it. I'm not sure how that's proof that it's part of berkat.
I guess
yeah.
Ferusha. As
Oh, so when it says my mevarech, that's just to explain, right? But that they still all fall under which one. In other words, explain which ones of the Birkat Chatanim you say. I think is what he's saying. But that they're all Birkat Chatanim at the end of the day.
right, exactly.
Okay. All right. So what's the nafkamina here? The nafkamina desarich asara. Right, so that's pretty big nafkamina. That if it is part of Birkat Chatanim, you need asara for Birkat Chatanim, and therefore for Asher Bar you also need a minyan. V'hadi amar mevarech chamesh mevarech shesh v'lo kamar shesimcha bimono de la bracha b'fnei atzmahi rak kolo oto b'virchat hazimun. All right, and the reason why we don't when the Gemara that says that you either bless 5 or 6. Right, but doesn't say that you'd say shesim chavimono because that's not actually a bracha. That's just part of the zimun. So, okay. Ve'Ramban zal katav the ashabar sarich asara ve'asim chavimono b'shlosha delav miberkat chatanim. All right.
Right. Right. That's part of the zimun. That's part of the zimun. Right. We go on.
Is this what's this?
V'ata.
It's vata. Okay. V'ata nagu av shesim chavimono. Be'asara davka, right? And so now we have a tradition that even even the zimun saying simcha b'mono, we only do with 10, just like we say Elokeinu, right? V'chach yireh, the sof probably.
Yeah.
Sof. So komi berchat nesuin he. Because everything is part of Birkat Nesuin at the end of the day, and Birkat Nesuin we've now here we go. Mikalot,
and there's our mikalot.
Yeah. So, and therefore we need 10.
Okay.
V'chein Birkat Erusin hakol iskei makor zivug. Delo matzanu shum bracha hein shel avilim hein shel nesvim shetia b'pachot me'asara v'chein nikar v'nachon ad kan l'shavo. This is all the Maharshal, right? The Maharal. Sorry, Maharal.
Right.
So
the Taz is bringing, the Taz is bringing that you need 10 even for Asher Bara. So what is the difference? So what don't you need?
Panim Hadashot.
Panim Hadashot. In other words, that's exactly. In other words, Panim Hadashot, the Gemara was just saying that if you have Panim Hadashot, you can say everything, and if you don't, then you just say Asher Bara. But it was never talking about a minyan. A minyan for sure, you need to have 10. So that's just an opinion that's sort of out there, and it makes sense, right? It makes sense from if you're saying it is Birkat Hatanim. That's going to be so. Anyway, you should be aware of that opinion that the Taz says that you need 10. Questions or comments?
Have you ever seen a place where they don't have 10 and they do Asher Bara?
Sure, at a Sheva Brachos, not at a wedding.
Yes, I mean, yeah, Sheva Bracha, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I told you.
They didn't have 10.
Yeah, not no Panim Hadashot. I mean, when they have no Panim Hadashot, but they don't have 10 either.
Right. You certainly you right. Nobody says you need Panim Hadashot actually, but yeah, I have been at places where they do that. Yes, I think it was I who instituted them. It was I who told it to do. All right. Let's so that's just that curiosity. I thought an interesting opinion. Let's go to Hay. Here, Josh, you want to read Hay? We're in the Shulchan Aruch in Hay.
Okay, great. מברכים ברכת חתנים בבית חתנים, אחר ברכת המזון בכל סעודה וסעודה שאוכלים שם. ואין מברכים ברכה זו, לא עבדים ולא קטנים.
Right. So you do this in whatever is the Beit Chatanim, which is like the place where the wedding took place. V'sodim b'kol suda v'suda she'ochlim sham. Presumably, the conception is that you would eat everything in the same. You'd set up a wedding hall, and you'd want to use it many times. It would be so expensive to set it up. You're going to keep using it.
A wedding hut.
A wedding hut. I don't know. No, but it would be for at least 10 men, it's going to be big. Okay, we'll talk more about this later, actually, this Seif. So let's read the next Seif.
עד כמה מברכים ברכה זו? אם היה אלמון שנשא אלמנה, מברכים אותה ביום ראשון בלבד. Widower and widow.
Yes.
Let me say it for the first day. ואם בחור שנשא אלמנה, או אלמון שנשא בתולה, מברכים אותה כל 7 ימיהם משתה. But if one of them wasn't a widow, then it's said for all 7 days of the wedding feasts.
Right. So this is the question. First of all, a big question is, what is it dafka and almana? Is that the definition, or is there any, what are the definitions of these people? And what is it? Is it dafka or batula?
It's leaving out the whole category of what if somebody's a garush.
Rusha, yeah.
Right, a garush.
Yeah, I mean, if the idea of almana is because, well, this is not a first wedding for them, so you don't want to take away that experience like you would for a first wedding. Somebody who's grushim would be in that same category.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
that's exactly right.
I'm assuming that that's the rationale behind it. I could be wrong. Maybe that's not it. That's just
the way it's understood. The way we understand this is that it's any man who has been married before. Any man who's been married before forfeits he is not going to be the reason to give Sheva Bracha. Now, but by the women,
is that in the Achronim?
You're saying, is it in the you're asking really, is it in the Rishonim? It's certainly in the Achronim. There's a Pitchit. What?
No, just when he says Alman, it's Lav Dafka.
Yeah, none of the commentaries here on the page say anything like that.
Is that a general rule that, like, when the Shulchan Aruch says Alman in certain situation, it means like anyone that's been previously married, or it's just like specific to the Seif?
Well, I mean, this is the main place where it's talked about, I think, in weddings. It's anybody. It would include a divorce. It would include a person who's divorced. Is it a general rule? Yeah, I think so. The real question is, what about like a woman who was never, in other words, here it says Batula. What about a woman who was not a Batula, but was never married? So basically, there's two reasons.
What about someone that's a Batula but was Almon? So basically, she got married, but before that a chance, right?
Also. So these are complicated questions.
Yeah.
I talked to a posek actually about it because it's confusing, and it comes out that a woman will lose her. In other words, a woman who's not a Batula or was married, even if the marriage was not consummated, would lose her 7 days of Sheva Brachot. She would only get 1 day of Sheva Brachot. That's what this, Aaron.
I'm maybe confused just because in the Shulchan Aruch it seems like it's only if both of them have previously had some sort of marriage.
Yeah. What I meant, I was trying to speak carefully. I was saying she loses the right to cause there to be Sheva Brachot. It can still be because of him. So if you have, let's say, 2 people who were never married but both had sex before marriage, you would still say Sheva Brachot because of the man, because the man never was married. Because the definition for the man is he has to never be married. It's kind of a sexist definition here. But so actually, since we're talking about it, let's look at this Pitchei Tshuva. There's a Pitchei Tshuva that talks about it.
Rav Nachum?
Yeah.
I just assume, though, that if they did Kiddushin via Bia, right, neither of them would be would have a virginal status, shall we say? But you still for sure say you do Sheva Brachot, right, for them.
So in order to understand, so the Pitchei Tshuva is going to help us because we're going to see there. He's going to give 2 reasons why you say Sheva Brachot. It's actually going to be 2 reasons, 2 different motivations for why you should say Sheva Brachot. So look at I just saw this Pitchei Tshuva today. I was looking at it today, so I'm sorry if I didn't warn you. But look at Vav in the Pitchei Tshuva. Here, maybe I'll read it a little bit. Tell me give me a thumbs up if you found it. Yeah. Okay, wait. Still, Yavni, you found it?
להרבה חתנים ביחד, is that the?
No, Pitrei Tshuva Vav Tet. I guess it's Sif Katan Tet. But it's on Sif Vav. You got it? Okay.
You mean Alman Shenasa Almana?
Ayin b'tshuvat noda b'Yehuda. Yeah, Alman
Yeah,
shenasa
okay.
almana. Exactly. So it says Ayin b'tshuvat noda b'Yehuda. Tanina siman pei bet. B'noef shenasa b'ulta. Noef is just his. There's no such concept as like a batul. So that's just his word for saying a person who had premarital relations. Shenasa b'ulta, that also married a woman who had premarital relations. It doesn't mean dafka noef like a person who committed adultery. He says b'ulta didei. B'ulta didei is also referred to as bulat atzmo. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about it also, but here he's talking about a case where the two of them were intimate before they were married. And then he says v'kol shekain ba'alman shenasa betulta delavdi beulta, beulta delavdi day. And also, if I'm married, there's no difference. He actually equates them. And there's no difference between when they had relations together or when the man and they never had relations. But he's an alman. He was actually married before, and he's with a woman who was not a virgin. So dino ka'alman shenasa alman. It's the same as an alman married an almana, because they both had they both had intimate relations before the wedding. Vein mevarachin sheva brachot ella yom rishon bilvad. Just the first day. The ikar sheva brachos humitam simchato v'simchata, because they're happy. V'zehu im lo tamo. Here he explains. Zehu im lo tamo tam bia. That's if they never experienced intimate relations. But if both of them have, then there's no simcha. What's the simcha? Masha'en came b'noef shekfar ta'amu tam bia. Ve'en lahem simcha ki im kamo alman shenasa almana. Just like it should be the same category as two divorced people or two widowed people that married each other.
Sorry, just quick question.
But this is shocking because we don't haskin like this. But this is the note of Yehuda. Yeah.
So by the logic, why do we keep on doing Shiva Brachot after the first night?
Because the simcha, yeah, I understand. It's not that the simcha of that day.
Because the first night has a specific, like we know that the first night has a specific status, right?
He's still happy. When you win the lottery, are you happy only the day you won it, or you're also happy 2 days later? You're still happy.
Yeah, but if I win it a third time, I'll still be happy 5 days later.
No, but my point is that that he has this experience, he has this Tom Bia, and now he's happy about it for 7 days.
But he's happy for 6 more days? No, like it doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of odd. Because like if the whole thing is that there is Tom Bia, therefore he's happy, why would you do it afterwards?
What would you do afterwards?
The happiness of the time, the first time Bia lasts for 7 days.
Yeah, the happiness. Well, how long is it? I don't understand.
Okay, so what if they had sex the day prior to their wedding? So then, by this logic, continue doing it for 6 days.
Yeah, maybe. You're right. I hear what you're saying, but yeah, I mean that's what he's saying. He's saying that it's I mean, I don't know if he invented this concept, but it's an interesting concept. I'm not familiar with it. Tom Bia, in other words, that's like it's kind of like the idea of a man can't be really a virgin, but in this sense he could be a virgin because he before that he didn't have he never had Tom Bia. So that's the note of Yehuda. Wait a second.
I think we had Aaron and Alan also wanted to jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add it's interesting in the light of the discussion of Over B'Yasiatan. It came up in the tour and I think also last week. The purpose of Sheva Bracha there seems to be over the entire marriage, right? We saw the position come up that one can actually say Sheva Bracha over the course of someone being married. But here it seems like Sheva Bracha is.
Where are you referring to? Sorry, what are you referring to?
But I think that might be a difference between Sheva Brachot at the chuppah as opposed to Sheva Brachot for the meals.
Yeah. I think you mean the Yamim Rabim in the Rambam. Is that what you're right?
Right.
Right. Yeah, you're lending support to him. You're saying you're saying there it's the simcha of the wedding, and it lasts for more than one day. Well, actually, that's going to be the other. In other words, what is the simcha of the wedding? In other words, what is the simcha that we're celebrating? Is it simcha bia, or this? We're about to see the Chatam Sofer is going to say a different reason.
Exactly.
And since we're talking about it already, I'll give the spoiler, and it is that it's simcha nesuin. So he says. So wait, let's continue. Or wait, somebody else had a question? Eric? No, okay.
Wait, to Ruben's point, didn't we see some fringe opinion that was like rejected very early that in fact after the bia after biat mitzvah there isn't
Sheva Brachot?
Sheva Brachot?
I don't recall such a thing now.
I'll try to find it.
Where were we? V'ayin b'tshuva shemesh tzedakah, or tzadak, I don't know, tzedakah. Siman Hey shehevi tshuvat dinat vradim, chelik, I don't know what, chelik aleph, I guess, I don't know. Klal aleph. Dinara shenitfasa liznut v'achar yamim kansa almon ein la bracha. So she's a woman that was a prostitute, I guess, and now she married a widow. Ein la bracha el yom echad v'simcha shlosha. She just has Sheva Brachos for one day and the simcha for 3 days. That's what you say she has simcha mamon, no, and that you have to can't go to work and things like that. Ve'ein chiluk bezeh bein zinta l'retzona la'anusa. And it doesn't matter, that's very weird. It doesn't matter if she was raped or she was a prostitute. And then he talks about umukat eitz. What if she is like technically not a virgin because she was something cut her bitulim. Katav dafal gav de'ein la din betula v'ketuvta mana, and she just gets a ketuv of one mana. Le'inyan bracha lo yigra mimena. We don't take away her sheva brachot. Yigra mimena mishpat hapetulot. Ho'il v'hi chadasha etzlo v'lo nivala lizulato. And she never actually had relations. So these are all supporting the idea that the simcha is based on sexual initiation. Let's put it that way. I don't know who the Rav Mechaber is. Maybe he means Shemesh Tzedakah because he was quoting somebody. Katav alav the nilmad midvarav the imhi beulta the day v'lo nivala la'acher daininan la ke betulta libracha v'lesimpa v'kal v'chomer shenivala lididei le'onsa. I don't know. That seems to be repeating what we said. I think isn't that just repeating what we said? That if she is a beula, she's going to get a sheva brachot because it was by him.
Well, that's different from what we said.
Oh
before,
no, it's
right?
different what we said. That's
yeah,
that's different.
So
I mean, he's introducing elements of sexual
in other words, right?
He's
different
that's what he's saying.
Exactly. He's different from the Noda B'Yehuda. Noda B'Yehuda said when they're together, then she lost it. But here it's saying no. If she is bulat atzmo, if those two have had relations before they got married, and then they got married, then they still say sheva bracha. Why is that? You didn't really say why.
I mean, I guess he has the same enjoyment because it's his own sexual exclusivity to a certain extent. So as far as he's concerned, he's the one that had like sex before, like is like sexually exclusive to her, if that makes sense. Like it's not tamed by the fact that she had sex with someone else. I know it sounds a little odd, but
That's, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But you're adding that. I mean, that's possible, but he didn't say that. But you're right, it fits to the idea. Joel, you want to say something?
I'm hesitant. I know. I'll say I wonder from the background. I mean, I'm speculating completely on him, but in the background is that whole idea of bolayich hosaich, sense that like her, the brit of a woman is like through her first sexual partner that shows up in at least in the Rashi. I don't know if it's in the Gemara itself, and there's a sense that therefore there's a particular relationship that requires more days of simcha or something like that. That's behind that.
Well, they could have been together for a year already.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it's like,
Yeah.
well, remember, it's a communal celebration. That's the other thing, though. I think that Sheva Brachot is a communal celebration of something too, and I think that's an important part of it. It's not just their simcha; it's the community joining in it. So maybe
I think that's a
Maybe.
machloket though, like whether it's like their simcha or communal simcha.
also fair. Yeah, I'm speculating a lot, so maybe I shouldn't
Here.
say anything. Here.
Let's go on. I want to get to the
Yeah.
Chatam Sofer. So we're in the Pitrei Tshuva for any latecomers. We're in the Pitrei Tshuva, Sifkat and Tet, and we're in the brackets. He has a square brackets. Va'ayin b'tshuvat Chatam Sofer Siman Kaf Gimel, Kuf Gimel. Kuf Kaf Gimel. Posek lahalacha da'almon shenasa be'ula penuya. That's kind of our case. He was married before, but she had sex before. Im he be'ulta tidei ain't.
I have a feeling he.
Sorry, yeah, I must have read it wrong. Be'ula penuya. Afilu im he be'ulta tidei ain't la eli yom echad lebracha v'simcha. No, bracha v'simcha shlosha. Now he says if they're bilat atzmo, then they only have one day. Ach im hu panui. No F. Well that's so it's yeah. But if he was sexually active, but he never got married, v'nasa be'ula, which is the same case as the Chatam as the Noda B'Yehuda. Mivarkim kol sheva kamola bachur elakevan shehem boale nida. Now it gets a little bit strict here. He says the kevan shehem boale nida, since they're boale nidot, ve'enam ruim lebracha. They shouldn't be blessed because they're having relations that are in nida. Ein ech yikablu pneihem panim hadashot. What important people are going to go to their Sheva brachas? Kol shiva. Eki kablu paneihem panim chadashot kol shiva. Chote bal yitaneh, because they're sinners. Ach im yimtzu reim kemotam. But if they find similar people to themselves who are also no afim, L'chadesh panim, to be friendly to them, to be panim chadashot, kol shiva, yivarchu lechem kol shiva. So then they can do it. Be'evi divrei Noda B'Yehuda, who he argues with essentially, because he's saying you can, as long as the man was never married. Tanina Hanal, the Katav, the Ein Mevarchin Sheva Brachot Ele Yom Echad Kevan Shekvar Tamu Tam Bia Vehesigalam. He said that doesn't make sense. It's not because of Tam Bia. The Katav the Ein Safek Ki Travaihu Itnehu Chibat Bia. There's two reasons. There's Chibat Bia for Chibat Chuppah, and just being happy that you're getting married. That's another reason to say Sheva Brachos. Kimuvar B'Ktu Tu Bodnun Vav Ella Misafkalan Hatam Eze Mehen Koneh. We're not sure which one is Koneh. Aval Travaihu Itnu, but both exist. Venira da Al Kol Echad Nitkan Baracha. on both of those reasons, whether it's simcha of marriage or simcha of sexual relations, either way, you should have sheva brachos. Ela bachur shenosei iket tarti hibat nisuin chadashim ubia chadasha. If it's a normal case, she says, well, nami mivarech. But even if you just have one, it's enough to bless. Nimsa da albia betula below chibat nisuin rishonim mivarech gam al chibat nisuin rishonim below chibat bia mivarech. So wait a second. What is he saying there? So if you're marrying, in other words, it's like this. It's always the man's, what he's saying is like this. It's always the man's simcha that we're blessing for. This is what he's saying. It's always the man's. But there's two possible reasons. Either it's because he's marrying a batula, in which case that's a kind of simcha, or it's because he's marrying for the first time, and that's a kind of simcha. But either way, it's from the perspective of the man. That's what the Chatam Sofer. Again, Nim said the albia betula below chibat nisuin. Right? There's no chibat nisuin because he's been married before, but it's a betula. Mivarech v'gam al chibat nisuin rishonim. And if it would be his first marriage below chibat bia, but the woman is not a virgin, he also will be happy because for him it's the first marriage.
So what do you do with the chiyuv that he has to be mesameach his wife?
So
in other words, that seems to be the greater. I just walked in on this. I'm sorry, but that seems to be,
that's the same thing.
In the Shulchan Aruch, that's how he defines it.
No. There's two things. The Sheva Brachos and there's a Simcha. The Simcha will be 7 days also, as long as he is chayiv to mesameach her for 7 days, as long as she is, as long as he's happy because she's a virgin, or he's happy because he's getting married for the first time.
No,
you just
different type of
just
simcha.
answer that up. I mean, is that like a creative?
No, that's what we just read.
Right.
I think that's what we just read. I think it's what we just read.
Can we just say that's two different type of simcha?
We read Rav Landis. We were just reading the Pitchei Tshuva. We read the Note of Yehuda. We read the Note of Yehuda and the Chatam Sofer. And the Note of Yehuda said two people who were sexually active before marriage do not get Sheva Brachos. They get 1 day of Sheva Brachos and 3 days of Simcha. And the Chatam Sofer says, well, as long as he was never married, then there'll always be, no matter who she is, basically, as long as he was never married, there'll always be Sheva Brachot and 7 days of Simcha.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Because the Note of Yehuda looks at it only as Bia, and the Chatam Sofer looks at it as both Bia and the new marriage being a reason for Sheva Brachot.
Okay.
Wait, so Reuven, you want to say something?
Oh no, just in regards to Rabbi Landis' question that he has a chiyuv to misameach his wife for 7 days, I would say that's different type of simcha, right? As it relates to Shiva Brachot, it's the community that has an obligation towards him to misameach them, and he has on himself like different obligation to misameach his wife that doesn't go through the Shiva Brachot. It's like I would say like it's different obligations.
Okay.
Right. Well, we see they're different days, a different amount of days. Okay, so that was sort of a side point, actually, in just a definition of what it means when it says alman and almana. And we saw that according to everybody, according to Note of Yehuda, it includes even a noef is considered an alman, right? And yeah. In other words, it's not specifically an almana. It's obviously a divorced person and also and any a divorced person also, because it's not his Nisuin Rishonim. Even according to the Chatam Sofer, it's a divorced person because it's not his first marriage. The divorced person marries a woman who is sexually active, there'll be only one day of Sheva Brachot. I was at a wedding actually where there was a divorced man married a Gioret. Now, a Gioret is an interesting question because for a Kohen, she's considered a Zona, but I don't necessarily say for this din. And I asked a Posek, and he told me that he read a tshuva. He didn't tell me what tshuva, but he read a tshuva that if the Gioret really is a virgin, then you would do 7 days of Sheva Brachot. But with lacking that knowledge or lacking that affirmation, then you would have to say 1 day. Asher.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been difficult for me this entire class so far is I'm not sure how we're supposed to be relating to them not getting the Sheva Brachot beyond the 1 day. Are we saying they don't get it because they don't deserve it? Because it like the way you were wording it earlier, and maybe this is just my take on it, it sounded almost like we're taking away from them something, lo magia lahem. Or are we saying they don't get it because it's not necessary because they've already experienced this before, so we're not celebrating a first time?
You're right. I said it badly the first time. I like the way you're saying it now.
Okay.
You're right. I agree with you. It's really that, and that's what the Chatam Sofer is saying. We're trying to figure out what is their simcha. How big is their simcha? How much simcha is there? Is there 7 days? It's kind of like what Ruben was saying. Is it 7 days of simcha? Is it 1 day of simcha? Depends how great the simcha is. We're trying to ascertain how great their simcha is, and based on that, that's how long their Sheva Brachos will be. Right. But it's also, what if you're very happy? Is it subjective or is it objective? What if they're very happy to be married, which hopefully they are. So
I was actually thinking, one of my rebbeim from when I was at Pardes just was widowed a couple of years ago, got remarried a couple of weeks ago. And I was actually thinking about this in terms of him. Magia lo, the 7 days, I would think. But
he married an almana? No.
Yeah. But I'm saying Magia, I don't know if that's what halachically is done, but
it's
but I would
much
think
better.
the level of happiness would be
as far as the Gioret, as far as the Gioret question, it's much better to have a simple rule and not have to embarrass anybody and just and ask them. Basically we don't ask them if they say they're going to do Sheva Brachos, then we take them at their word. We're not. I don't think we would really ask them in detail. Joel.
Right.
No, I wanted to reframe it a little bit. I think that, because it's not just about the happiness, it's about the happiness of a new experience, right? That we have just a general idea that new experiences require a particular type of simcha. And here and really the question between the Noda Yehuda and the Chatam Sofer is which new experience or both is it that's required for that? Is it the new experience of having sex, or is it the new experience of being married? Either one of those might be enough, or you need both to trigger having Sheva Brachot. But the Brachot are really on the newness of that experience, I think.
You're right. They're both about. You're right. It's both about a first time event, some kind of first time event, whether it's sex or marriage. Right. But I think like Rabbi Landis always like to talk about creating halachic, framework, a halachic system, and we'd rather have a general rule that divorcees don't, and that here it's a little bit complicated because a divorcee would if she is a virgin, and then you have to get into a touchy question.
Nachum, you have a couple of people. You have Aaron. You have a couple of people.
Sorry, I'm not always seeing everybody. Aaron.
Just back to Asher's point. I think that, right, Asher, you said, right, there's sort of like is it like an issue of like lo magia lahem, or is it just an issue of like it's not appropriate? I think, right, in the Shulchan Aruch also, it's not clear that the Shulchan Aruch himself means lav davka aman amana. You can imagine like there's a specific sort of experience of like leaving aside whether you've been divorced, leaving aside whether you've had sex before, but specifically alman and almana, like these two people who have lost their previous partners getting remarried, where like that's the specific situation where we don't want to have some sort of extra simcha. And there's some sort of acknowledgement both of, yeah, not only is this not the first time, but also maybe like there might be some mixed emotions, and we don't want to have people doing this big simcha when sort of subjectively they're not in a place of unmitigated simcha necessarily. Granted, I've never been an alman or almana, so it might be that people who are wedded are like delighted to find someone new.
No, but I think that once we've expanded almana to, or an alman to be even a divorcee or a divorced man, so then he may be very happy he got divorced.
Right, but that's also but there's still a sense of loss, I think.
There's
No?
there's a sense of second. You're saying it's second bet. It's like it's my zivug. They talk about zivug sheni. It's your zivug sheni.
Well,
It's not everything perfect.
Well, it might be right. I think about the Gemara and Sot on that, but I mean, it might be like actually you're like, oh, this divorce, I'm so glad I got divorced. This marriage is much better. But alman and almana, what really happened is like the person you really wanted to marry is dead, and now you really have like a second best or second choice in a way that is not necessarily true for noef at gerush gerusha. The almana experience might be sui generis in a way that once we expand it to lavdavka, we get into a whole different emotional range.
Actually, I think one thing I've noticed, just I'm not divorced myself, but I've noticed, and this actually backs up what you're saying, Aaron. Even for Girushim, I don't think I've ever been to a wedding of somebody who it was a second wedding, that their second wedding was anywhere near as large as the first. There is something about the second wedding that, at least what I've seen in my own experiences, that it's not as huge an event. And I've been to a few weddings of people, both the first and second weddings, and the difference was extreme. So maybe that backs up what you're saying, actually.
And I really like what Aaron is saying, and I'm actually wondering if there's anyone that interprets the Shulchan Aruch verbatim, like actually like reads alman and almana as what it is, as opposed to expanding it to whoever had sex in the past. Because that would make a lot of sense, right? If you lost your wife like in a tragic accident or in any other way, right? There's a sense of like loss when you get married again, like you don't feel the full simcha. Like maybe even yourself, you don't want to have 7 days of celebration. Maybe you just want to have one because it reminds you of painful memories. Like for me, it's a bit far-fetched to expand, like especially for like halacha, which is usually pretty like, I wouldn't say strict, but usually likes to use the proper words. For me, it's a bit far-fetched as it relates to this subject, we all of a sudden decide that alman and almana includes anyone that has sex in the past.
Mm-hmm. You know, if you read the Shulchan Aruch as it's written, you get the impression that an almana is sort of a sadder person. You know, they've gone through mourning. They've been, they were married and then they lost their husband, and they're kind of they're like a mourner of Jerusalem. Their simcha is never fully there because they always remember the suffering that they went through. And therefore, they don't want to have a Sheva Brachot because they're a little bit less happy. So you don't like the expansion. But you could say that a person also who is divorced, he's also a little bit, things have not gone right in his life.
Not necessarily. Some people may be really happy to have a second marriage.
They were happy to get
the first one.
Yeah. They're very happy to get married, but they're also things have not gone right in their life. There's something, they thought they were marrying the right person and they weren't. They may, and they may have children with them, and now they have a complicated relationship with the two families, and they're more entangled, and it's less of a, ideal. It's not the circumstance they thought they were going to get into. When they got married the first time, they thought they were going to be married forever to that person.
The Pshatnik in me wants to agree with Ruben about saying if it says alman, why are we expanding it so much? But on the other hand, they said that, as we said when we first read it, our first impression, I think, for several of us, was there are a lot of people being sort of not covered in this, and it leaves us sort of wondering, what about them? So the expansion is almost begged for in a way. But
Yeah, because we have to talk about what is it? Yeah, exactly. Then how come we didn't talk about we're contrasting an almana with a betula or a bachur? We didn't ever talk about garush. We didn't talk about it. The Shulchan Aruch is wanting because it doesn't discuss all the cases. Anyway, this is based on a Gemara. We should see the Gemara, but we're not going to do that tonight because we have other things to do. Any other people have comments? So there's this,
we have seen other places where the dichotomy is almana versus betula, leaving out any other possibilities.
Yeah, can you remind me?
There was the one in the question of the chuppah about wasn't like when it was describing like the question of what day do you get married if you're marrying a betula versus if you're marrying an almana. I think that's how it's phrased also.
Mm-hmm.
What day of the week? And then the question of like the issue of on Shabbat, like if you need to do the yichud before Shabbat.
Also, whether or not Bia's Kona, right, or the Chuppah's Kona, right, just depends on the almana.
I mean, I tend to agree with. I tend to think that these are that because we're contrasting only those two, so we have to ask ourselves, where does Gerush go? And it seems, especially from that case where we want to go to the Beit Din to see if she's really because she wasn't really a betula, that in that case an almana would be the same as a Gerush. So we see that the term almana should encompass more than an almana, at least in that case that you're giving, and probably here too. So we were in Vav, right? This came out of Vav. We read all of Vav, right? No, did we read all of Vav?
I don't think we did the Ramah.
Yeah. So wait, Josh, you're reading. Actually, read Vav again from the beginning.
Okay, it's been a while. Okay, עד כמה מברכים ברכה זו, אם היה אלמון שנשא אלמנה, מברכים אותה ביום ראשון בלבד. ואם בחור שנשא אלמנה או אלמון שנשא בתולה, מברכים אותה כל 7 ימי המשתה. נרמה עד, ואלו 7 ימים מתחילים מיד לאחר 7 ברכות שבירך בראשונה.
So what does he mean? They start right after. So if you look in the Chelka Mechelkek Zion, he said, read, it's very short.
Okay.
Well, what's his point? Elu Shivas Yamim Matchilim Miyad. And not what? So he says,
להפוקי שלא נאמר שיתחילו 7 ימי משתה מאכילה ראשונה. אין שם.
In other words, so what does it mean, Me'achila Rishona?
The wedding feast. Is that right? The
what's
wedding
the
feast doesn't
nafkamina?
count. The wedding feast doesn't count as day 1?
No, it does.
It does.
I think it does. What he's exactly, that's the first way you might think what he's saying is, no, it's la fuke shilono mar sheyatchil sheva me'achila rishona. What if the achila rishona was 2 days later? You might think, let's say they had the wedding in the synagogue and everybody went home and the meal was 2 days later. So you might think, well, so the meal was 2 days later, we'll start from 2 days later for 7 days. So that's what he's come to afuke. That's if you go back to the Ramah, the Elu Shivas Yamim matchilim miyad la'achar sheva brachot shebirech berishona. In other words, it starts immediately after the brachot under the chuppah, which is very interesting, because if you have the sheva brachos under the chuppah before sunset or before shkia, and then you have the meal after sunset or shkia, I don't know exactly which is the time, but let's say shkia, you actually lost your first day. Your first day is over because it starts miyad achar sheva brachot shebirech berishona. And that's going to get us, everyone's with me. So you only get 6 days then. So it's actually, in a certain way, better to get married in the winter because, you have your wedding at night. And then, if you want lots of Sheva brachos. If you get married in the summer and you get married before, no, only 6, no, so still Sheva brachos. So you'll get 7 brachot, but for only 6 days. If you do it in the daytime, and then the meal is at night. Now that exactly is an interesting question because that's going to bring us into this. I don't know how great this question is, but it's certainly bothered a lot of people, and that is, what about an alman and almana who do a wedding in such a way that we just described, that they have the wedding in the daytime, the Sheva brachot, just before Shkia, and then just after Shkia, they go into the hall and they have their meal. Do they now say Sheva brachot at the end of that meal, or is it already the next day? And they only get 1 day for Sheva brachot. So the 3rd day is gone. Aaron, you have a question?
Oh, I think some of the Rishonim a number of the Rishonim deal with this question and say that they don't make Sheva brachot if they're an alman and almana who only have 1 day and they're eating, their first meal doesn't take place until after sunset, that they don't have Sheva brachot at all.
Well, the Rishonim do talk about it. And the Achronim bring it, and it's a machloket. It's a machloket like almost everything about these brachot that we're going to discuss. Look, well,
can I just make a short comment?
Yeah.
I might be totally off, but it seems to me that the Chalkav Mechokek is taking a stance in the previous discussion we had. He's basically saying that what enacts the Shiva Brachot is the Simcha of the Chuppah, right? Because basically, once you have the meal, you already had Yichud. So basically, you might have thought that what enacts the Shiva Brachot is the Simcha of the Biyah. But he's just saying, no, you have to do it prior to the meal, prior to the Yichud, because what enacts the Shiva Brachot is really the Simcha of the Chuppah. And I might be totally off, but I think it's a good way to read it.
Wait, you say because the Biyah didn't happen yet?
Exactly. So before anything happens, before they even do Yichud, before they go back to their place, before they eat, like you already have enough Simcha to enact the Shiva Brachot. Which means that what creates the Shiva Brachot is really
what is the note of Yehuda going to answer?
I guess is kind of going against him. I'm not sure.
Oh, he could answer. He could say it's anticipatory simcha. It's a simcha. He knows what's coming that night. He's still happy about that.
Right. The whole time is an erotic time. So
anticipation is sometimes greater than anything else.
But you have some single guys here. Don't tell them this.
No, my grandmother, or my grandmother, sometimes an old lady will plan a trip to visit her grandchildren, and for 2 months she's happy that she's going to be going. In 2 months, I'm going to be going, and in 6 weeks I'm going to be going, and in 4 weeks I'm going to, all that time, and the trip is only 2 days, but for 4 months, 2 months she was thinking about that. Anyway, but it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point. It's a nice way to bring that together.
Can I ask a question before we go on?
Yeah, Masha.
I am really having trouble seeing what's the purpose of legislating the amount of simcha that a couple gets. And the only time that I found it really convincing was with the case in the Gemara where the brachot were levatala, because the wedding didn't actually consummate. But other than that, I can't see why. I can't see what is the purpose of, unless it's to save people money, that they don't think they have an obligation to continue having a party they can't afford, or something that has a legal social implication. I just don't understand why this is problematic.
Well, I think it actually, first of all, the Gemara says it. The Gemara talks about these different cases. The Gemara is legislating it. And I think that, the answer I would give is something that was said in class just tonight, which is that it's not that we're legislating, it's that we're defining how happy we're taking note of the varying degrees of happiness that are in first and second weddings. In first weddings, people, usually make a bigger deal. Second weddings, that's what Asher was saying, and I think it's true. The weddings that I know of, people who had a second marriage, they already did that. They already had a big, huge thing with 600 people. And now they realize that there's no point in that. And they want to just have their 50 good friends, and that's enough. So there is, in a second marriage, and al-halacha is reflecting that psychological reality. And maybe giving people a teirutz. You know what? You don't have to have a 600 people wedding on your second marriage. We were telling them that. You don't have to have 7. A lot of people don't want to have Sheva Bracha for 7 days, So we're telling them, you know what? We're giving you, you don't have to feel like, we're telling you you're not allowed to. And then once by telling you you're not allowed to, then all of a sudden, you don't feel guilty. Why didn't you do it? You don't have to explain to anybody. That's the halacha. The halacha is reflecting the normal, or what they consider to be the majority reaction to a second marriage. That's my, based on what was said in class today.
Rav Nachum?
Yeah.
If I was thinking, I can't find it right. We saw that originally, right, I think in the Gemara, it says, right, that even you can, if you have a Suda, you have to, in the first 30 days for the sake of the Chatan and Kala, right, then, or in the Beit Chatim, even not for their sake, you still say, at least Asher Bara, Asher Yatzar, and Simcha B'Mono, right, even for the first year. But now that like, we have less Simcha in the world, essentially, like, we don't do this anymore. I wonder if there is also a sense here of like, it's an unusual thing. I mean, get very maybe almost theological, but in like the post Beit HaMikdash world, there's almost like a nervousness around doing too much simcha is part of it too. It's like we don't want to, and so therefore we have to, only particular cases can we have this exception where we can like kind of go all out and have simcha. And other than that, we're like very nervous about it.
Well, you're definitely right. The Shulchan Aruch, a little known psak of the Shulchan Aruch is that you're not allowed to listen to music, not in the 9 days, but ever, because we're sad about the temple being destroyed. So there's a kind of you're right. On the one hand, it's a vicious cycle, or it's a feedback loop, because on the one hand, the halacha legislates a certain amount of sadness, and on the other hand, it's reflecting a certain amount it's reflecting a reality of sadness, I think. But a first wedding, we make an exception for. There's a first wedding is 7 days of mishteh. I mean, Gentiles don't do that.
Listen, not every Jew enjoys 7 days of Sheva Brachos.
Right.
Cheryl and I had 3 days of Sheva Brachos. I couldn't stand Sheva Brachos. Going to Sheva Brachos. Looking around tables of people by the 3rd day and the 4th day of Sheva Brachos. Sheva Brachos is not a chiyuv, it's an option. I'm partially responding to you, Mark. So it's an option. How much are you going to be machayib people to order the pizza by day 6? I mean, it's like too much. That's one thing. Second thing is I never had a case of a situation of second marriage where someone complained to me at the couple, we want more Sheva Brachos. I never heard that. It's just as testimony.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we should take a break now. And we'll come back in 5 minutes.
Rav Landis.
So we don't have time to read it, but if you in the Vav, in the Chelkat Mechokek, and in the Beit Shmuel, he brings the Rosh, who talks about this topic, about an alman and almana, who the wedding spanned a course of 2 days. In other words, the wedding was erev, was before Shkia, and the party was after Shkia, and basically, there are those, it's not clear what the Rosh is saying. And there are those that say that the Rosh is saying it's lost. Only the first day, and you lost the first day. And therefore, even on the wedding night, you don't say Sheva Brachot. And then he brings that the Bedek Habayit argues on this and says, no, when it says Suda, when it says Yoma Kama, it means Suda Kamaita. It means the first meal, whenever that first meal should be. That's what the Rosh means. The Rosh says that when it says the first day you say brachot, it means really the first meal. And the question is, what does the Rosh mean? Does he mean the first meal of the first day and not the second meal of the first day, but for sure the first day? Or does he mean when it says the first day, it really means the first meal whenever that meal should be, whether it's on the second day or the third day? So the Beit Shmuel brings a bunch of people that paskin that he does say it, that the Alman and the Almana do say Sheva Brachos even if it's the day later. He brings a bunch of people. He brings the Sherit Yosef. I don't know who that is. But anyway, and then but he brings other poskim, the Rif, the Rambam, that they hold that the first day is the first day. Anyway, he leaves it as a machloket. And he says the last line, if you just look at the last line of the Beit Shmuel, the last sentence really is a period. In the last line of the Beit Shmuel in Hay as just a kind of an interesting sentence, and I'll see what you guys think of it. You see that everyone sees that the last line is v'nireh b'kol pluktot elu. You see that? The very last line, the last half of the last line by me in the Beit Shmuel, he says v'nireh b'kol pluktot elu amrinan safik brachot lahakel. Wait just a second. What does that mean? What does he mean? Because he says, in all of these things, in all of these doubts, this is like he's saying, since this is a bracha, and we don't ever have to say bracha, and there's a doubt that some people say you do, some people say don't, so just don't bother, don't say it. Because this is I find it a little bit like letting the wind out of the sail, like once you say that, then okay, you're right. You don't have to say bracha, but every time there's a machloket, you're going to say that. We don't. In the end, we don't. Not always do we do that. Sometimes we say, well, the minhag is to say in this case, not to say in that case. But here he's saying, don't say it. So it comes out lahalacha, you don't say, even if it's the same night. I mean, even if it's the same night. Ki'ilu, the same night, but it's really between two different days.
Sorry, you don't say it, or like it doesn't matter if you said it?
No, safek bracha lahakel means when there's a doubt of the poskim whether to say whether you should say the bracha or not, just to be quiet.
Just say it, right? Mekil. That's how I understood.
No, safek bracha lahakel means you don't.
Which means that if you say the bracha, like who cares? No, I mean I could be totally wrong.
That's not the way I understood it. Wait, Rabbi Landis, Rabbi Joel.
Okay, I have a whole thing on this, but I'll make it short. There's actually two shitas on safek brachos lahakel. One shita is, which seems to be, very common shita. Safek brachos lahakel really refers to the impact that we don't make a bracha when there's a safek, because brachos are derabanan, safek bracha. And what's our fear? What's our problem? Our problem is the bracha of Atala. It's the bracha of Atala, then we're motzi Shem Hashem Atala. So that's that. But there's another shita which actually I once knew and I have forgotten, but I was looking in the Har Tzvi, and he brings it down from, I have it in front of me, and I'm so sorry because of the seven, the Pnei Yoshua. And Pnei Yoshua says, Safek brachos lahakel means there's no chiyuv of the bracha, but there's no iser in making the bracha. Which means if you wanted to, you can make the bracha. Tremendous, right? I thought I'd
Yeah,
get a reaction.
very interesting.
Tremendous chiddush. And I can't get over that the Hartzvi doesn't argue with it. He says this is it's a good shita. So so just repeat. I'll just repeat. Safek brasa hakel can very well mean we're making in the sense that you don't bother you to do it, but we don't bother you because there's an Easter, a potential Easter of making a bracha being Moshe Shem Hashem L'Batala. That's why when I used to go to certain events when I was young, and they would sing the bracha of Shechianu 37 times. I counted once. Shechianu v'kbut baruch. That's a bracha Batala. But the other sheet says no. The Safi Brasla Hakel is there's no chiyuv of the bracha, but there's no Easter on doing so. You can say it as a regular bracha if you want to. It's not bad, by the way, to have that in your pocket when you need it. And it doesn't cover singing. May she rest in peace, Debbie Friedman, who I had to my house and we were friends. And I said to her, how can you sing the same bracha over 37 times? And she corrected me. She says actually 43 times if I counted on the record. But whatever. Okay, I'm done.
Joel, you want to say something?
It's similar. I think it's the Shulchan Torah, the Karmana Rebbe, who wrote it. It's like a perush on the Shulchan Aruch. He makes the argument that Sefek Bracha, like the same thing, that it's you can. I've never relied on this, but he makes it quite it's a really lamdish argument as to why he actually thinks the Gemara holds that way. It's pretty. If you can find the work, it's hard to get a hold of. But so
okay.
I don't know.
All
I
right.
like that second explanation because that would be like a sensitive sack. Instead of broadcasting to everyone the sexual status of like the kala and the chatan, whatever, just make the bracha, let everyone be happy about it, and end the story.
Right. Okay. Well, we certainly would not embarrass somebody over such a thing. So you're right. In that sense, embarrassing somebody is much worse than saying a bracha that maybe you don't need. Here's a case of where it's only maybe you don't need. There are Rishonim that say you do need it. Presumably the Rosh. Well, according to some explanations in the Rosh. Okay, so let's go further. Maybe Aaron, you want to read Zion?
ברכה זו שמוסיפים בבית חתנים היא ברכה אחרונה משבע ברכות, שהיא ברכת אשר ברא. ויש אומרים דאף אשר ברא אין מברך כל שבעה אלא כשמזמנין אחרים. אבל אם אוכלים בני ביתו אין מברכים, וכן נוהגים. במה דברים אמורים? כשהיו אוכלים הם שעמדו בברכת נישואין ושמעו הברכות. אבל אם היו אוכלים אחרים ולא שמעו ברכת נישואין בשעת נישואין, מברכים בשבילם אחר ברכת המזון שבע ברכות, כדרך שמברכים בשעת נישואין, והוא שיהיו 10 וחתן מן המניין. ויש אומרים שאפילו היו בשעת החופה ושמעו הברכות, אם לא אכלו שם עד עתה, מקרה פנים חדשות מברכים בשבילם שבע ברכות אחר ברכת המזון, לכם פשט המנהג. יש אומרים אם היו שם פנים חדשות, אף על פי שאין אוכלים שם, מברך בשבילם לילה ויום.
Okay, so there's a lot there. We just did a heck of a lot of details there. So let's start again. So he starts in a very strange way because he says Asher Bara is like the normal bracha that we add. And then he says, and if there are Panim Hadashot, we also add more bracha. But it's like the standard thing that we add is Asher Bara. Now, and then the Ramah says, V'yesh omrim that you don't say Asher Bara unless there are other people there. Now, what does he mean? Mazminim acherim, avalim ochelim, and he contrasts that with eating with just your nuclear family, just your b'nei beita, just the normal people that you eat with. So, what do you think acherim is? What are acherim? Yeah, Aaron.
It seems like it's anyone who's not, obviously, anyone who's not Bnei Beito, but also it doesn't have to be Panim Hadashot. So it can be people who are at the wedding, and it could be people who were there yesterday and the day before, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. So So if you look, I looked up this Ran, and it's in Ketubot, and yeah, it's clear that he's talking about just he can. It's really pretty much the lashon here is exactly the Ran. Anybody who's not b'nei beito, so it doesn't have to be Panim Hadashot. Nobody is saying that you need Panim Hadashot for Asher Bara. We saw earlier today that you need maybe a minyan, but nobody says you need. That's a machloket, but really we paskin that you don't need a minyan. And then, by the way, that's an example of where we don't say Sheva brachot, Safek brachot lakil, because there's a Safek. The Taz says you need a minyan, and everybody else says you don't need a minyan. So it's a Safek between the poskim. So we should just not say Asher Bara. But actually, we do say Asher Bara when there's three, as provided that it's not completely private. It's not a completely private meal. So if you just if it's a private meal, you don't say, but there has to be somebody there, even if he's not a Panim Hadashot. And then, what's the next part? This, the time that you don't say anything about a Asher Bara is only when you have what you would call Panim Yeshanot, old people who were at the wedding. But what is he? He says Shamu. Whose opinion is that? Yeah, Aaron?
I think that's the Rambam.
That's exactly right. The Rambam says if they heard, then they are they're no longer Panim Hadashot. And what's this other opinion? And then V'yesh omrim she'afilu hayu b'shas achuva v'shamu im lo achlu. Whose opinion is that? So if you saw in the Beit Yosef, you would have seen whose opinion is that? Anyone? Yeah, Aaron?
I think the Ran.
I think the Rosh, actually. The Rosh. That's the Rosh. Maybe the Ran also. The Ran also kind of says that, but I wasn't. It's not clear from the Ran. I didn't think. It's really the Rosh is who. Wait, let's see. Yeah. If you actually look in Zion in the Beit Shmuel, he does bring something that the Ran says with something else. In Zion, it says, Afilu im rak echad panim chadashot mivarchim b'shvilo. You just need one panim chadashot. There actually are some Sephardi poskim who say panim chadashot is in plural, and therefore you need two. And actually, if you look in the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch, it says mivarchim b'shvilam, and shelo shamu. Everything is plural. Hem. B'mei dvarim kishayu ochlim hem amdu b'birchat nesuim. And then he says aval im hayu ochlim acherim. Acherim is in plural. Shelo shamu b'birchat nesuim. If you read the Mechaber literally, it's what?
The panim are in plural.
The panim are the hem. Yeah, you could say that. Hem, yeah, you could say that. But anyway, there are certain Sephardi poskim that say you do need two. But here you saw in the Beit Shmuel, it clearly says you just need one person. And then the last part is also interesting. The Ramah, he says, what is the import of what the Ramah is saying at the end?
Are you talking about the last part? Yimuchal ibn Beto?
No, v'yesh omrim de'im hayu sham panim chadashot af al pi she'ein ochlim sham mivarech b'shvilam laila v'yom. I'm really interested in the laila v'yom. So if we look at Tet in the Beit Shmuel, Kfar Ketavti Rov Poskim Cholkim al Zeh. In other words, this is the opinion that this is the Ran actually. And it says it's the Ran who holds that if they're there at night, then they're there for the whole day. In other words, what does it mean? It's like this. You might say, what does it mean? So they don't come in the daytime? In other words, what is the Ramah saying? It sounds like he's saying, if they're there at the nighttime, then also the next morning, if you have a breakfast meal, you can say Sheva Brachos if you have a minyan, even though you don't have any new Panim Hadashot, because you had Panim Hadashot in the Laila before. So the Ran says, no, they have to actually still be there in the morning. But the point is, they don't have to be new Panim Hadashot. In other words, once you have Panim Hadashot for day Gimel, then day Gimel, as long as those Panim Hadashot are still there for however many meals they're there for, if you have 6 meals on Yom Gimel with the same person who was Panim Hadashot, you'll say Sheva Brachos 7 times for him. Or however many times, however many meals you have, you'll say Sheva Brachot. You don't need to get a new Sheva Brachot for a second meal when the same Panim Hadashot are still there. Yeah, is that clear? That's what the Ramah is saying. And the Chelka B'Chokek is saying we don't pass them.
It's a very big extension of Panim Hadashot, right? So Panim Hadashot, it's like a pretty huge extension of Panim Hadashot, right?
Yeah, it's saying, this is the Ran. The Ran holds like this. The Ran is saying, what does he say? He's saying, this day has become a happy day because we have a new person here and we're excited about him being here. And as long as he's here, of course, if he leaves, then the meal, then if we have another meal, we're not going to say, but as long as he's here, we're excited about it. It's back to what we were talking about before. How long does the Simcha extend?
Right. Again, it aligns with what you were saying before, right? You had sex the first day and you're happy for 7 days. So you had a guest for the first day. It stays there. You're happy for 7 days too.
Right. You're happy for 1 day. Each new guest that comes, as long as you have 1 guest each day, then he makes that day a Simcha Dika day. Any other comments?
Yeah, just the out of experience, this feels true. If a new friend comes, they haven't seen in months, then the glow can last for a little while. Maybe not the first meal, after a few meals, you get used to it.
Right. It's for a day. For a day. A day is a nice. That's because that's the Gemara. The Gemara says. I mean, it's really just a literal reading of the Gemara. We didn't really look at the Gemara, but the Gemara says, maybe we did it with Rav Landis, but the Gemara says, if he comes, if there's Panim Hadashot, you bless kulhu. It says kulhu brachot or kulhu yom. I'm not sure. It says you bless all the brachot if you have a Panim Hadashot, but it says for that day. It says for that day. So it sounds like the Ran. Does he say why Lama? Okay, so but let's look at also this is a big question, Yud Aleph. Look at Yud Aleph in the Chelka B'Chokek. He says this is going on where the Ramah said Afal pi she'ein ochlim. This is really weird. This is a famous question. Your Panim Hadashot are coming. And they say, oh, we had a big meal, we don't want to eat. So do you have to give them a piece of cake or something? Do they have to eat? Do your Panim Hadashot have to eat? So look, here, Ruben, why don't you read Yud Aleph?
אף על פי שאנוכלים שם, רק שעומד שם בשעת הברכה. ומכל מקום נראה שצריך שהיו בני החופה שמחים על ביאתו שם, ואף שלא הרבו בשבילם, מכל מקום ראוי להרבות בשבילם, וכמו שהכתוב אחר זה. So basically saying like, you don't have to feed him, so long as you're happy that he's present.
And that it's ra'ui la'arbot b'shvilam, and that he's the kind of that you would normally make more food for him. In other words,
so you have to be like able to feed him if needs be, or this type of thing.
No, ra'ui, I think he means like that he is a mechubad person.
Has to be important enough.
Yeah, he has to be like. In other words, what you can't do, it comes out halacha l'maisa. What you can't do is have a meal at your house, and then you need panim, and then you invite your neighbor to be panim chadashot. that you're an option, they have to be smechim al biato. In other words, comes out that person, this is a little bit of a chumrah. It comes out that Panim Hadashot have to be somebody that the Chatan and Kala knew and are happy that they're there. You can't just invite your friend who they don't know. He wasn't at the wedding because the Chatan and Kala couldn't care less about him. Well, then he's not Panim Hadashot. Panim Hadashot has to be, he says, Shebnei chuppah smechim al biato. They have to be happy that he's come. So, in other words, on the one hand, he doesn't have to eat. On the other hand, you should be happy for him that he came.
Isn't there an opinion that even if you heard the Shiva Brachot at the chuppah, you could still be Panim Hadashot?
That's the Rambam. No, the Rambam says if you heard, that's not the Rambam, that's the Rosh. The Rosh holds that if you heard, but you didn't eat, then you're still Panim Hadashot.
But isn't that specifically if you heard at the chuppah, not if you heard, right?
You're asking, I understand. Let me spell out the kasha you're asking. The kasha you're asking is, this guy doesn't eat, and we're happy that he came. So now, according to the Rosh, he could be Panim Hadashot in perpetuity for the next day and the next day and the next day, because he never ate. Is that what you're asking?
I wasn't asking that, but that's a great kasha, though.
In other words, I thought you were asking is, since he didn't eat, lo achlusha adata mikrim panim chadashot, and this guy says the Helkat Mecholkek, he doesn't actually have to eat, so then he could still potentially be a panim chadashot next time.
But I think that's what the last part comes to answer. The last part is like he didn't eat out of a choice. It's not, he didn't eat not because you didn't have food for him. It's just because he chose not to eat. Like you have to have food available for him if you wanted to. Yeah. I think that kind of answers your question. Like if you have a case where you could have eaten if you wanted to and decided not to, so then for this one time it's going to be Panim Hadashot, not the day after.
But I thought the opinion that he could still be Panim, that someone could still be Panim Hadashot that after having heard, but not as long as they haven't eaten, was specifically if they're at the wedding and they heard those Shabbat Brachot, then that's going
to be, that's what we're going to have to say in Halacha L'Maisa, right? Otherwise we would have a weird, otherwise Halacha would not make sense. You have to say like that not eating, but you can't be counted, because Rashi did say Shelo Hayusham Netmo, and he can't count twice for Panim Hadashot. I don't think. So if the guy doesn't eat, he still used up his Panim Hadashot characteristic. All right, let's go to the next Seif. Alan, you want to read?
Oh, sorry, I'm mute there. Starting on Achat. Yeah. יש אומרים שאינם נקראים פנים חדשות, אלא אם כן הם בני אדם שמרבים בשבילם. ויש אומרים שבת ויום טוב ראשון ושני הווה כפנים חדשות בסעודת לילה ושחרית, אבל לא בסעודה שלישית, וכן פשט המנהג.
Go ahead.
ועכשיו נהגו במדינות אלו לברך שבע ברכות בסעודה שלישית, ואפשר רגילים לבוא. ויש אומרים מטעם רגילים לדרוש, הדרשה הווה פנים חדשות.
Right. So basically what we're saying is, we're sort of defining Panim Hadashot. We're saying that it's somebody who you would add food for them. And if you look in Yud Gimel, he says, you don't have to actually add food to them, but that it's Ra'ui Larbot Likvodo. In other words, even if you didn't actually give them more, create more food for them, but they are the type of person, that's sort of our definition of a person who's important enough to create simcha. He's important enough to create simcha if he would add food for him. And then he says that Shabbat is also there's actually a drasha there's a medrash that compares Shabbat to Panim Hadashot, where I don't know if it's brought here, but there's a medrash. It's actually a medrash that is it here?
I think it shows up in Chuma. We saw it, may have seen it in the Beit Yosef.
Maybe we saw it in the Beit Yosef. I don't remember where I saw it, but there's a medrash that says that it's like Panim, that Shabbos is like Shabbos came. It's Panim Chadash. It's
in the sources you gave us. I don't remember exactly which one, but it's definitely there.
It's in the Tosfot.
It's in the Tosfot. Yeah. So
no source before that.
So, but here we could say more simply that just like Shabbat is another reason to be happy. If you want to explain to somebody why we don't need Panim Chadashot on Shabbat, the simplest explanation is to just say, because you're extra happy. It's like an extra simcha. Now it's Shabbos and it's also a wedding. We have an extra reason to be happy. Something new happened. Shabbat happened. And then the question is, what about Suda Shlishi? Is Suda Shlishi, maybe because you only have, is that really part of Shabbat or not? So the Mechaber says it's not, and the Ramah says, no, we do count Suda Shlishi. And he says, well, maybe it's because people come anyway. Like for Suda Shlishi, people come. Extra people come to your house. Apparently, they had big parties for Suda Shlishi. Like people didn't want to invite you for. It's I guess today is like that. If you're inviting somebody for lunch or dinner, you have to have the right number of plates and everything. But Suda Shlishi, you can have extra people come because it's sort of it's more like a buffet style meal. V'yesh omri mitam deragilin l'drosh. The drusha somehow is. Okay, let's go on to 10th.
So a quick question. So how far do we extend the last part of the Rama, saying like a drasha is considered like a Panim Hadashot? Because by the logic, you kind of open the door to never need Panim Hadashot as long as you have a little Torah going on.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. The only thing I can reminds me of is there's a halacha that says that when Erev Pesach is Shabbos, so you can't have Suda Shlishi because you can't eat matzah and you can't eat bread. So how do you do Suda Shlishi? So the Gra says that you give that the drasha counts as Suda Shlishi. That a drasha, that learning Torah is somehow counts as Suda Shlishi. So here we're saying that you learn Torah at Suda Shlishi. So I don't know. Maybe that gives it an extra simcha. It's an interesting question. Why? I don't know. I didn't research that. Rabbi Landis, did you want to talk? You had did you want to point out something to us? I don't hear you said you have about 20 minutes that you wanted to talk.
I just was Makatzer, but I will add, regarding talking about that we're makil on brachas, but there are several other ways of taking care of that. One way, and when you have a suffix bracha, one way is to be, I don't know how that would go into a chuppah, to be maharher on the bracha. There's dayot that here where bracha is considered like a bracha, and you don't have a problem of the being motzei Shem Hashem levatala because you're never motzei Shem Hashem. So under a chuppah, I don't think that would work. But in situations in which a person doesn't know whether or not they should make a bracha, what you should do then in such a situation is think of the bracha to yourself, and that way you're yotzei bracha, and you don't have a bracha, potential bracha batala. Under the chuppah, which was done a number of times, and people have told me that they saw it, and it was done by Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Sonnenfeld was the leader of the Eidah Charedis in Yerushalayim, great Talmid Chacham. And what he would do when there was a suffix about the Sheva Brachos, he would recite the Gemara Kesubos Daf Chet, which has the full list of brachas and counts as limud Torah in the case there was no need for a bracha. On the other hand, it would count as a bracha if according to the suffix there really was a bracha. But I'll leave it at that. So that was 20 minutes I was going to talk about, but that's sufficient. And
Okay.
then I was going to add with the Pnei Yoshua, which I've already talked about.
Okay. I didn't realize you said it. That was a great point. That fit in perfectly with the class then. All right. So that's very interesting. I never heard that about that's a funny story to read the Gemara. Let's go to Tet. Let's go to Tet. And we'll just finish up here. Yavni, you want to read Tet?
יש אומרים שאין לומר 7 ברכות על כוס ברכת המזון, אלא מביא כוס אחר ואומר עליו 7 ברכות, וחוזר ולוקח כוס של ברכת המזון.
אומר עליו 6 ברכות. 6 ברכות, ו'.
In my printing it says Zayin.
Really?
Wow.
In ours it says Shin Shin. Mine is Shin Shin Hey. Shisha.
Wow.
Be in mind.
I like
It
yours
makes
better.
sense. It makes sense that it would be Shisha because
Yeah, I like yours better. Yep. Shisha brachot, yeah, it makes much more sense. Yeah. Except that it should be shesh brachot, not shisha, right? I'm not sure. Anyway.
yeah, it should be Shesh Brachot. Yes. Bracha is Nekeva.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine just says Vav Brachot, that makes it easy.
וחוזר ולוקח כוס של ברכת המזון ואומר עליו בורא פרי הגפן. ויש אומרים שאין צריך אלא על כוס של ברכת המזון, מברך, what does it say? 6 ברכות?
7 brachot.
7 ברכות. וכן פשט המנהג.
So Pashat HaMinhag, and so has the Minhag spread.
וכן פשט המנהג.
So, right. So the Minhag that he's saying is to say on 1 cup. On 1 cup. That's also, if you're at a wedding and or at a, Sheva Brachos and by mistake they said on 1 cup. So that was the Minhag of the Mechaber. Now read on.
ובמדינות אלו נוהגים כסברה ראשונה, ויש אומרים דאפילו לאשר ברא לחוד באינן 2 כוסות. מה שכתוב במנהגים ישנים. וברכת אירוסין וברכת חתנים אומרים אותה על 2 כוסות, אפילו מקדש בשעת החופה, ונוהגים להפסיק ביניהם בקריאת הכתובה.
Right. So these are very important halachot. But first of all, he said, we use 2 different cups, even if you're just saying Asher Bara. You don't have Panim Hadashot, you're still going to say 2 cups. But he points out that Birkat Irusin and Birkat Chatanim, which those 2 you can't put on 1 cup. Those 2 you need 2 cups for, because they're totally different brachot. And in fact, we say, we read the ketubah in between, so we can say Brei Pri Hagafen 2 times. And that's sort of our hefsek. Actually, I'm looking for where it says, there's actually 3 reasons if you, it must be in the Beit Yosef. Just a second. If you look in the Beit Yosef, well, actually, there are 3 reasons why Yes, it's in the Prisha. Remember we saw this before. I think we saw this before last week. He says 3 reasons why, in the Prisha, he says 3 reasons why we say Brit Begafen twice. One was because mitzvot chavilot. One was that we stopped with the Kriyat Ketubah, which you just saw now. And the third is that sometimes we say Kiddushin and then a year later do Chuppah. So then there would really be 2 separate cups. You can't wait a year with the same cup. So we want to have one custom, and to maintain one custom, you're gonna have to have 2 cups also now, even though we were doing them next to each other. Let's go to Yud Aleph. Read Yud Aleph. Yud.
Me? You want me to
Yeah,
go?
Yavni, read one more.
יש אומרים שאם החתן יוצא מחופתו, אפילו כלתו עמו והולכים לאכול בבית אחר, אין אומרים שם ברכת חתנים, והנמילה כשדעתו לחזור אחר כך לחופתו, אבל אם הולך לגמרי לבית אחר, וכל החבורה עמו, וכל החבורה עמו, ונעשה אותו בית עיקר, ונעשה אותו בית עיקר, גם שם נקרא חופה, ומברכים ברכת חתנים, וכן לפעמים שהולכים החתן והכלה לעיר אחרת, צריך לברך שם ברכת חתנים, אם הוא תוך 7.
So, what is the principle? What is the principle here?
The principle here is that it's happening in the house that the new house that they're making is the place where the Sheva Brachot are supposed to happen. And if they go and are guests somewhere else, then you don't do Sheva Brachot there.
And when do you do?
When you like move.
But if it's aval im holech legamrei,
right, when it's like moving to a new spot.
Exactly. When you're moving to a new spot, it's wherever your new spot is. If you just read this simply, you might say, wait a second. If you just read the first part, you're going to say, wait a second. Well, every Sheva Brachos I've ever been to, we go to one guy's house, and another guy's house, another person's house.
Yeah. This seems to be not the way we practice.
It seems to be.
Mine was actually even more extreme. We did a traveling Sheva Brachot up and down the East Coast. We went to a different city every day. And we made our house here in Israel, but we got married in the States.
Right.
So I don't know if any of us counted.
Well, wait a second. No, but so let's think about this carefully. What does it mean? Look what he says. Im holech legamrei lebeito. What? Wait, no, the first part. V'hani mili kishedato lachzor achar kach lechupato. What does that mean? How does that give you a heter?
As long as you're not going to go back to that original house.
Right.
So are people cautious about that? Like not to go back to the house?
Well, no, dato. You could go back, but the dato. In other words, you're not. You didn't rent the wedding hall for 2 nights. You rented it for 1 night. In other words, that was you left that place and now you moved to another place. It could be that every night you're at a different place, but each time you made the new place that you're at, you didn't plan to come back to it. So if you're like a vagabond, you're wherever where I lay my hat, there's my home.
This opinion wouldn't work for the Rambam, who thinks chuppah is actually hichnas veto.
Right.
Because
well, we don't hear you so well.
Just that the Rambam thinks the chuppah is ultimately entering into the house where you are going to stay, period. And so that this would not make sense with his position at all.
Right, exactly, yeah. The cheder yichud is the beit chuppah. You're saying so, yeah. But no, you could move it. You could still move. That could be you could change your mind. It could be temporary, You're saying in general, well, the Rambam also says you should first buy a house before you get married, so that you can do this properly. I want to look in the time we have left.
I just have a small question. I'm kind of confused because like this kind of the last Siman seems to say that like the whole Shiva Bracha relies on other people bringing you happiness, right? So you need like other people that bring you joy. But like a couple Simanim prior, it seems to be that your joy comes from the fact that you're having sex for the first time. It's like, where's the balance? Like, is it like a personal joy, or is the fact that someone else brings you joy? So that's where I'm kind of confused.
So you can answer your own question. How would you answer it?
The mix of both. I don't know. The fact that
you need. It has to be a simcha. It has to be a personal simcha that you want. You know, if you're really happy, you want to share your simcha with other people. Just people visiting you is not necessarily a simcha. It's a simcha when you're having a birthday party and then people come. Then it's a simcha. Just, you know what I mean? There has to be, siba lebisiba. You have to have first the reason for the misiba. And then as more people join and are happy for you, then that becomes a bigger simcha for you. But you need to have the garin. You need to have that first seed of there being a simcha. And then that add to you. Then their coming adds to the simcha. I don't know. I mean, yeah, is that good? Does that work for you? But you're right. I mean, you're pointing out two different aspects of it. Your simcha, but there has to be an additional Panim Hadashot. You're asking why does there have to be Panim Hadashot at all? Sort of like reinvigorating your simcha. Maybe that's the answer to your question, but how does it last 7 days? More people coming. All right, so there's a tshuva here.
I think I had a comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Comments.
Oh, just off of Ruben's question, thinking back to the Noda Behuda, right? It's a little weird, right, that everybody's coming for 7 days to do the Sheva Bracha with you. That is about you being To'em Tam Bia for the first time. Right? I'm thinking about in the Aruch HaShulchan when he says like, all right, we really don't want people like standing right outside the door of a yichud room while people are having sex. Right, if the Noda Behuda is right, that it makes it like a very strange religious practice, right? Everybody's coming and saying like, right, we're not going to say this about sex, but we're actually all very happy that everybody here's like To'em Tam Bia for the first time. It makes much more intuitive sense then for it, just from the fact that other people are sharing in the happiness. Like, what is something that would be like appropriate to publicly share in happiness together? It seems like much more intuitive that it is much more either a combination or more heavily about the Nisuin itself than about the Bia.
I think, you're making a good argument. You're saying the Chatam Sofer seems more appealing and it fits together better with the idea that we're celebrating. You don't celebrate some kind of action like that in public. Although there is that aspect to it. I mean, people do think about that.
Right, but it's sort of like more like an open secret.
It's an open secret, exactly. People know about it, they think about it, they don't say anything because they're polite.
Sigmund Freud didn't get it from the guy.
I mean, right, everybody, especially if it's like a young couple and we think about that, we know an added reason why they're happy. We're all aware of what reasons they have for being happy.
Yeah, but aren't you supposed not to talk about it? There's a Gemara that say you're not supposed to make any comments about it, or you're not supposed to really talk about it. And now if we make a whole celebration around it, it creates this kind of odd dichotomy where like we're not supposed to talk about sex. However, let's just celebrate the fact that those two just had sex. It's like, I don't know, for me it's odd.
It is odd, but I think it's
I agree with you, Ruben, but I don't want to talk about it.
I want to hear what you have to say about it.
No, but I think this works out very, very well. You have eroticism, you have diversion, you have the young couple, but then you have community. I think it's great.
All right, there's a tshuva. I want a tshuva in the Taz. There's a very big Taz here. We're not going to read it all because it's very big. But he's asked a question. The question is, this is Taz Zion. The question is, some rich person wants to make a party for the couple and to have it at his house, and then they're going to go back to their house. So, or well, it's not clear. Actually, I don't remember if he says they're going to go back. But they're going to have a big party at his house. Let's just leave it like that, and we'll see the answer. And should they say Sheva Brachos because it's not their house? And we just read that it has to be in your own house. And here it's being held at this rich person's house. So this is a very how do you say educational tshuva, because it also tells us a Gemara that we need to know. So look in the Taz. You see where it says the big word. By me, it says the word tshuva. Is Shela, and then a couple lines later tshuva. You see that? Yeah, Aaron, you got it? Ruben?
I don't have it, but start with Ami. I'll find my way.
Okay.
Where it
Masha, you
says
got it. Asher.
Tshuva b'Perush Hayashan.
Yes, it says tshuva b'perek hayasham.
Oh,
Exactly.
no, I don't see it.
Got it.
You don't see it? I don't handle sarcasm well.
Sorry, I done 24/7 dad jokes. I can't help it.
Okay. All right, so I'll read this a little bit. Tshuva, b'perek hayashan. That's in the Gemara Sukkot. Sukkah, if you want to look it up, it's in Sukkah Kaf Hey Amud Bet. B'perek hayashan. Ita Amar Rav. Rav said, and this is very relevant to our topic. Chatan Vishush Binav and his celebrators. Piturim in a sukkah. They're exempt from the sukkah. Why? Kol Shiva. Why? Oh, the whole 7 days. My timer, Mishum, the boy michte. They need to make him happy. Uparchina, and they ask, Lechli besukkah. Velechdu besukkah. Let them go to the sukkah and be happy in the sukkah. Umishaninan, ein simcha ela b'chuppah. We say, no, you have to have the simcha at the place, at the Beit Chatanim, at the place where the wedding was. You can't do it in the sukkah. V'lichli b'sukkah. Sorry. I mean, I added the answer, I think. Ein simcha ela b'chuppah. So you can't do it, you have to do it in the chuppah. So it says, v'lichli b'sukkah v'lichli b'chuppah. So let them go to the sukkah and eat, and then go back and have the simcha at the chuppah. In other words, you're telling me you can only be happy in the chuppah, so then be happy so eat in the sukkah, and then be happy in the wedding hall. Ein simcha ela b'makom suda. No, you can't have simcha unless you have a meal, and the meal means you have to have a meal in the Beit Chatanim to have simcha there, and then you're out of the sukkah. So you must be patur for the sukkah. V'leiv di chuppah b'sukkah. So make the chuppah in the sukkah, says the Gemara. Abaye Amar mishum yichud. You can't do a chuppah in the sukkah because you can't have proper yichud in a flimsy building. Rava Amar mishum tzara. And we learned this Gemara maybe. Uperish Rashi yichud. So because of tsar, because of it's uncomfortable there. Uperish Rashi yichud shestam sukotehem haya al gagotehen v'lo shchichi rabim. Did we learn this? Did we learn this before? You remember learning this Gemara?
It came up in a Rishon already, I think.
Yeah, it came up in a Rishon. Okay. So it goes through this. Okay, so he doesn't want to be with the Kala. I'll just skip a little bit. The walls are open. So the Kasvu Atosos. The Kasvu Atosos mash momikan im yatsa chatan michupato afilu kalato imo v'olchim le'echol b'bayit acher The ain mevarchin shesimcha mo'ano, because they're not in their place. V'lo birkat chatanim, and they don't say sheva brachas. Kevan she'ain simcha ela b'chuppah. V'arosh evi divreihem katav zal v'nira mekan ein raya she'ain levarech birkat chatanim b'makom shechatan v'halakal alchim le'echol bebeit acher. The haki perisher. This is not a proof that you can't go and eat in some other place. Because the only reason that the chuppah it remains the place of simcha is because he never intended to abandon the chuppah. He never intended to abandon it. But if he would, then all bets are off. If he wasn't planning on going back. He only did that and then he's going to go back to the chuppah. He just went to the sukkah to do the mitzvah. So he was intending to go back. He and his friends go to another place and they don't plan to come back. That becomes the new Beit Ikar. Gam sham nikra chuppah. And that is called the chuppah. And he can bless the birkat chatanim. So too, there was a case where a person went to another town and they did their chuppah there all 7 days. As davka yivarech birkat chatanim be'oto bayit va'az ne'akar kvi'at chuppah mebeit harishon aval im halach li. So then he lost. Right? It says that's ne'akar kvi'at chuppah. The fixedness of the chuppah has been removed. It's now in this new house, not in the old house. But if he just went for part of the day, afilu kulo, even if he went the whole day, but he wants to lashuv acharkach, he wants to go back to the Beit Chupato, and the Varech Roto Bayit. If it's just temporary, he's going back home, then he can't. V'yesh makom the perush zeh. V'yesh makom the perush zeh. There is, we could accept this explanation. The Amar b'Seifa aval im holech legamrei lebeit acher b'chulei, because the Rosh said legamrei lebeit acher. V'ken yesh lochiach milashon hatur, Even Ezer Siman Samak Bet, shekatav v'zel l'shona im yatsa misham le'echol b'bayit acher v'dato lachzor. If you want to go back, l'toch chupato, ein levarech birkat chatanim, then you don't bless the birkat chatanim because he wants to go back. Aval im holech legamre lebeit acher v'chulei. Mashma de b'dato lachzor l'chupato. Seems to imply that his intent is to go back to his chuppah. And that Talia milk, and on that the matter rests. Ve'im came b'nidon nidan, and therefore in our case, b'suda shesuda she'acher oseh, this meal that another person does likvod hachatan v'kala, for the honor of the bride and groom, chutz lebeit nisuin, outside, lo haya lehem levarech sham, they shouldn't bless. Afalpi sheyesh sham harbe smachot chatan v'kala, even though they're very happy. Kevan shechatan v'kala yelchu achar kach lebeit shalem. Omnam, however, ki daiki yafe lo temahachim, but you can't say this if you are careful about what he said, about what the Rosh said. Lo temahachim chada di'im kain. First of all, if so, lo haya lo laharosh tov tchila v'nira she'en mikan raya. Then why did he write there's no raya from here? She'en mikan raya she'en levarech makom shechatan v'kala holchim le'echol b'bayit acher. Mashma le'echol lefi sha'olchim sham ela hayala liktov holchim likvoa hanesuin bebeit acher. He should have said, wait, again, you have to read that again. The Rosh should have written what? That there is no Nira she'ein mikan raya she'ein livarech b'makom shechatan v'kala olchim le'echol b'beit acher. You shouldn't have written it that way, because that implies that they, notice he just says they went to eat there. In other words, the Rosh said they went to eat there, and he still said they could bless. In other words, it's mashma that they were just going to eat there. He should have written they were going to likvoa makom anisuin b'bayit acher. Given to visit liyamilta. So he's saying that it's not. There's no proof from the Rosh. And if we just skip to the end, he says the last 10 lines by me. It says va'al kein nira. It's sort of the last 10 lines of the says. Va'al kein nira barur deyesh levarech birchat chatanim bekol bayit shosim bo suda likvod chatan v'kala v'smechim sham kmo shekatavti lefi ma she'amru shamaran. לפי הנראה, יש לברך בכל גבני בבתים אחרים שכן נוהגים היום לברך בכל אחת מהבתים אפילו שלא במקום החופה. He says we can say the bracha. We can say Sheva brachas in any house. אלא שיש לחוש לדברי התוספות. So then he says, ואחר זמן ראיתי שכתב מהר"ל מפראג בפרק כמה כתובות שפסק כוונתי פסקת like me. ואנו מברכים אף במקום שלא היה שם קופה, אף על גב דאמרינן סוכה לכדי וסוכה ליטבי בסוכות, וכאמר שם אין שמחה אלא בחופה, שני התם דלא יכול לשמוח כראוי. In other words, in a sukkah, they couldn't possibly do the simcha properly. So in other words, he's saying like this, that you can't learn anything from the Gemara, because the Gemara is talking about, I'm quoting the Maharal now, the Gemara is talking about a sukkah, and there's no simcha in a sukkah dafka, because a sukkah is a flimsy building. But if you would be in a nice place, then you could. Understand? So, so if you're asking what is the source for our minhag of actually going around, it's because as long as the place is an appropriate place to have a simcha, and there is simcha there, then in other words, the Gemara didn't, right, what the Taz was saying is the Gemara didn't say go and fix your place in the sukkah. The Gemara just said go and eat in the sukkah. So the implication is that might have been enough. And they said, no, the Gemara said, no, there's no simcha in the sukkah. And it's not because, it's because the sukkah itself is essentially not a good enough place for a wedding to happen. But if, isn't
that counterintuitive when throughout the whole Chag of Sukkot we say v'samachta b'chagecha?
Yeah, I hear your point. I was thinking the same thing. You're happy, but but it's still not. You're happy to be in a booth, to be under God's protection, but it's still a booth, and it's still not like a bayit chatan. It's not.
Right.
It's not.
Well, the other question I had, the other question I had before we finally heard his tshuva, which put it to rest. How is a sukkah any less permanent than the wedding hall that you rent for the day?
I'm saying because of its structure. Not because of your attitude towards it.
Because we're supposed to treat the sukkah like a house anyway. I mean, we're supposed to live in it. It's supposed to be.
It's because of the nature of the structure. The sukkah is a booth, and a wedding has to be in a beit simcha, like the Rambam says, an actual house or a hall. So the Taz and the Maharal are saying, as long as the place you're going is a place of simcha and a proper place, and an appropriate place, don't learn too much from this Gemara. This Gemara, because the Gemara should have said, let them go and be happy in the sukkah. Why didn't the Gemara ever suggest, let them koveya their makom of their wedding in the sukkah. And then they would have pattered the whole problem if that's what the whole matter, that's what the Taz is saying, right? If the whole thing is determined about where your fixed place is, then make your fixed place the sukkah, and the Gemara should have suggested that. From the fact the Gemara never suggested that, the Taz is saying it's irrelevant factor. It's an irrelevant factor. The only factor that's relevant is that it's not a sukkah, that it shouldn't be a booth, that it should be a nice place. So on that basis, he's mattering. Sorry if I read too much. I read a lot. It was too long, and I didn't read it at all. But sorry if it's too much. But that's the basic idea that the Taz is saying. That and therefore, if you go to your friend's house and he's got a house, and it's a nice place, or you go to a wedding, a restaurant. So, an interesting question that comes to my mind is, what about, a very beautiful custom people do of like going to the woods and having a wedding in the woods. So I guess still you should. There should be some apparently sound. Maybe they were just living in a certain era where people did things indoors, but it's from his language. It sounds like preferably you should have the actual eating indoors. Although I was at a very nice wedding in a kibbutz and their lawn. So I'll leave that as a halachic shaila for you guys to get back to me on. All right, so Laila Tov, Yishar Koach to everybody. I actually have some questions and answers that like summary of the halachot. I'll send it out. Maybe it'll be useful.
Are we meeting next week?
Next week we're not going to meet. And so in 2 weeks
starting after Pesach.
We'll meet after Pesach. Exactly, the Monday after Pesach. And we'll do the next Siman Samach Gilul. Okay?
Awesome.